The meeting is now called to order. This is the Finance and Economic Development meeting for Tuesday, September 6, 2022. I am the chair, Councilmember Chris Johnson from the 7th District. At this time, I will introduce my esteemed colleagues through a roll call. Vice Chair Harley, 4th District. I see your screen.
Unmute ourselves.
I believe she's present, but you're muted, Vice Chair Harley. But
I'm present.
Okay.
No, I don't know. I was having some kind of technical difficulty, but I'm good now. Thank you.
No problem. All right. Councilmember Oliver, 3rd District.
Present.
Councilmember Field, 8th District.
Present.
At-large Councilmember Spadola.
Present.
At-large Councilmember Walsh is excused. Council President Congo. Here. And we also have some other council members in attendance. In the physical chambers, we have, I believe, Councilmember Darby
Present.
from the 2nd District, and then we have Councilmember McCoy from the 6th District.
Here.
Now, I do not have my computer screen, so WITM will need to help me out a little bit. I don't know who's on the Zoom. Is there any council members on the Zoom?
Just Vice Chair Harley.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. And a friendly reminder, this is the first finance meeting in a few months. Only members of the committee should be making motions and seconding. And obviously, if there's questions, as always, if you're physically present, we do have a sign-up sheet here in front of the committee room. But if you're on Zoom, same as always, use the raise hand feature, and we will acknowledge you. This point, we have a pretty packed agenda, so I'm just going to move swiftly. And again, if folks do sign on from council, please let WITN know so I can get the note. First on the agenda, as has been typical for the past few months, we have on the agenda an update on the American Rescue Plan funds, where we're at as a status update. So is there anyone from the administration here to speak on that?
Good evening, Councilman Johnson. I will give an update.
Okay. All right.
Wonderful.
The floor is yours, ma'am.
Thank you very much. Okay, so I will just give an overview of every, kind of a high-level overview of every category, and then we'll answer any questions you have afterward.
All right.
Starting with administrative costs, we have an overall budget of about 1.7 million. Of that amount, we have allocated to specific projects an amount of about $1.2 million. And from that, we have spent $538,518. From Building Safer Communities, we have an overall budget of $8 million. Of that amount, $1 million was allocated to council for councilmanic projects. $500,000 has been allocated to specific projects, and $83,000 has been spent. From community investment, that had an overall budget of $5 million. $300,000 has been allocated to council for councilmanic projects. $3,661,000 has been allocated to specific projects, and of that amount, $1.638 million has been expended. For essential pay for essential workers, we have spent $2,664,318. Neighborhood revitalization, we have an overall budget of $22 million. We have allocated about $18.6 million, and we have spent about $6 million. Revenue replacement, we have allocated $12 million, and that money has been moved to the general fund. Workforce development, we have an overall budget of $4 million. We have allocated about $2.1 million to specific projects and have expended $7,039. That is the overview. If you have any specific questions, I'm happy to answer.
Ms. Mergler, is the specific breakdown on the ARPA hub, the wallet
The
With the
OpenGov?
specific project names.
Yes, they are split up. So if you go to the OpenGov page, at the top is kind of the overall budget for the projects. But if you scroll down, you'll see in those kind of orange bands the overall category. So administrative costs and the individual projects underneath that, neighborhood revitalization, et cetera, as you continue to scroll down the page. Now, again, only the projects that have been established in our accounting system are visible on
Could you speak up?
Oh.
Miss,
You said at the same time.
yeah, Miss Mergler, it seems like your volume's a little bit low, but
Voice
Oh,
was clear.
I apologize. Is this better?
yes, that's better.
Wonderful. Okay.
Thank you.
On OpenGov, yes, the projects are split into the specific categories. If you just scroll down the screen a little bit, they're split up underneath the orange headings for each category. And then, each of these specific projects are listed under each. But as a reminder, only the projects that have been established in our accounting system are visible on OpenGov. So there are certain projects in which we have allocated the money, but say a contract is just currently being established, or we have a contract, but the money just hasn't been transferred in Munis yet. Those are not visible.
Okay, all right.
When
Thank you
will-
very much. Ms. Mergler, I believe there's some questions by members of council.
Certainly.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So when you just said it was some projects, but we don't see it in OpenGov, when will we see it? Or is it something you can send over to Marshall so we can physically see what you're talking about? Because you said it is some funding that's already allocated to various organizations or contractors, but they haven't received it. So, when people ask, I can say, well, look, I see your name there, but it just hasn't taken place yet.
Absolutely. And in fact, if you would prefer, I can put them up on OpenGov before they've been established in our accounting system. They just won't be visible in that top pie
Right.
chart. But I can certainly just put the project underneath with underneath each category, since that can be done manually. So I will just go ahead and do that. And that way, anything that has been allocated will be visible.
Thank you. That'd just help if someone asks, I could look under there. But the OpenGov, I have noticed that it's updated, I guess, to the best of your ability. Thank you so much.
And as a follow-up, Ms. Mergler, so I see that there's some bids on there as well. So is the bid process going to always be updated? I see there's currently one right now for the, I guess, 1000 block of Lombard. Is that something that's going to be regular?
Sure. I would like to clarify for the public, though, that what I was referring to was the OpenGov spending tracker. The bids are on our OpenGov page on the city's website. I'm not the OpenGov page, I'm sorry, the ARPA page on the city's website. So whenever we receive a contract that's gone out to bid, we post the RFP on the website. So whenever we receive those from our development partners, Woodlawn trustees, Habitat for Humanity, et cetera, we post them. So yes, those are being posted as soon as we're a bit aware of them, we post them.
Okay, and is there any other announcement for those bids? I understand that some have closed already. I think there's been a bidder, contractor open houses, I know. Is there another way, is possibly through WITN, that we can get the information out there about the bids?
That's a great idea. I will check in with our team, with our director of real estate and housing and our partners, and I think it's a great idea to try and advertise these in as many places as we can. So we will definitely have a conversation with them.
Because I may, if I'm correct, I believe one closes on Friday, correct? One of the bids?
I believe so.
Okay.
So yeah, so absolutely. We will check in on that, and we will make sure that we publicize them in as many avenues as we can.
Okay. All right, perfect. Thank you very much, Ms. Mergler.
Yeah.
Councilmember McCoy?
Thank you, Council President. I'm sorry, Chair. I just wanted to ask a question. It was basically about the building safer communities, the 8 million, and I'm looking at there's 1 million to be transferred to the tax stabilization reserve portion. So as we're having these conversations, and we've actually stated a few times, we quoted that number of 8 million, when in actuality it's 7. So it looks like we're putting a 1 million to the side for general fund balance for additional revenue replacement. Is that
So
correct?
that was for the councilmanic projects.
Oh, so, okay, so that's what it is. Okay, all right, thank you. Is there another way to put that then? Yeah, I'm like, is there another way to rephrase that then? Because that actually confused me. And I was just about to ask where our funds actually fell into this, to these.
Sure,
to this fund.
I can rephrase that so it's
Okay.
clear.
Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Bass Knight, was there a question?
Yeah, I just have one question, Stephanie. For Culture Restoration Project and for Christina Cultural Arts Center, are those two entities, are the contracts still pending? I mean, I see them out there, but I haven't seen like any funds actually expended as of yet.
Sure. So with Christina Cultural Arts Center, first of all, just to give a little bit of background about how the drawdowns actually happen. For the most part, our grantees are set up on a reimbursement basis. So the first step is the contract is signed. After the contract is signed and a project is set up, the grantee has an orientation meeting with our compliance team. And that, just to kind of go over the rules and regulations associated with spending the money in accordance with the U.S. trustee. After that, and during that process, they explain how to make a drawdown on the funds, which is to submit an invoice to the compliance team to review, and then once that has been accepted, then it's passed along to the city, and then we, expend the funds. So in this case, Christina Cultural Arts Center has had their orientation, and we have signed the contract. It's just that they are in they are actually doing construction works, which takes a little bit more time. So as soon as we get the drawdown, an approved drawdown request from UHY, we will approve the expend out of those funds. Similar with cultural restoration. They have had their orientation. Now we just need to have an approved drawdown request.
And Mr. Chair, may I follow up?
Yes, please.
And since we had the July the 6th Finance Committee meeting, it looks like no additional entities have been awarded ARPA funds, correct?
Mr. Chair, may I address?
Yes, Chief of Staff, Washington.
So just a little point of clarification. Christina Cultural Arts, I did approve over $100,000 today in my queue. So a check is being processed for Christina Cultural Arts. I'm sorry, go ahead, Stephanie.
I believe that was the purchase order.
Was that the what? The purchase order? Was a purchase order for 100,000? Okay. And in addition to that, there are about, I want to say, at least 4 more projects that are pending that have been approved, but they are still going to go through the contract process.
Are those for,
Those are the pipeline items that I will put on OpenGov so that you can all see them.
Ms. Washington, are those additional organizations that are not yet on OpenGov? So I guess
Yes.
I was just trying to get clarity.
Right.
Was there any additional funding since our last July 6th Finance Committee meeting?
Yeah, they're not listed on OpenGov, and that's actually what Stephanie says she would share with the council.
Okay. Do we happen to know what the name of those 4 entities are, or no?
I don't want to leave one out. Just trying to think off the top of my head. We have Delaware Children's Museum.
Challenge program.
Yeah, the Challenge Program, DETV, and there's one other one that I can't think off the top of my head, but
Okay.
we'll make sure you get that information.
All right, thanks.
Mhm.
Okay, and that would be helpful, because I'm even on the website now, Chief of Staff Washington, and it's somewhat confusing if there's projects where, again, the obligation contract has, even if it's officially been signed, that would be more helpful, I think, so we can track the
Yeah.
spending.
Well, let's just, and keep in mind that when the ARPA updates, it's updating you out of Munis. So if an actual project is not active in Munis, you won't see it on the OpenGov site. So that's where we have to start adding some additional projects that haven't been quite teed up yet.
Okay. All right, thank you very much, Chief of Staff Washington. Any other questions from members of council? All right.
Yeah, they have one question. Thank you,
Yes,
Chair. I
Councilmember.
just wanted to follow up. Reed's Refugee, I think, I didn't see anything, or are they okay?
Reed's Refuge, we have paid out $123,000, I believe. So yeah, they are.
Oh, I see it, I'm sorry. It's real small, thank you.
All right. All right, thank you very much, Ms. Mergler. We appreciate the update. Actually, let me turn it first before we close with this. Is there any comments or questions from members of the public?
There is no public
Okay.
comment,
All right.
Mr. Chair.
All right, seeing none. Again, in closing, Ms. Mergler, we appreciate you giving us a comprehensive update. I feel like we are getting, I think things are starting to move very fast. So, when you're doing that, definitely I think the little tweaks to the website would be great. And then also just the little pointer about actually trying to advertise the bids a little bit more, so that we, as council, can help the administration make sure we get the bids out, so folks can make sure they're part of the process. All right. All right, thank you very much. And now, next, I'll turn it to agenda item number 2, update on the city's infrastructure fund projects. I don't know if this is still you, Ms. Mergler, or is it Chief of Staff Washington?
Actually, it's Kelly
Oh,
Williams, Commissioner
sorry.
of Public Works.
All
I can-
right, Commissioner, the floor is yours.
Thank you. So, yeah, I can speak to some of the projects that we've received or are anticipated to receive funding from the IIJA for our projects. We are anticipated to receive $18,350,000 for lead removal and water main replacement for the water sewer fund. Basically, that is going to flow from the federal government through the state as an SRF project. Our notice of intent has been submitted. The full application is being worked on now, and it must be voted on by WEAC, but we fully anticipate that we get that 18 million and change for that project. The next project, we anticipate getting $4,773,000 in emerging contaminant funding, basically PFAs. Basically, that's for engineering and testing for emerging contaminants in our water supply. And so the hoops and the Brandywine and possibly our wastewater treatment plant, that $4 million will go to the, identifying the PFOAs and the PFAs in our system, and then what kind of engineering solutions we can identify to address those situations. That is on the water side. On the transportation side, we've received a Transportation Infrastructure Investment Fund grant, a TIF grant, on the East 7th Street Peninsula. We've received $4.67 million to raise the East 7th Street Peninsula. Basically, it's a grant to Light Action and Challenge program through the Office of Economic Development to raise that road. So that's some of the infrastructure money that we've received on the transportation side. And then we've also received or have been promised to receive some congressionally direct spending money from Senator Carpenter, Senator Carper, $4.8 million for sewer improvements in the South Market Street redevelopment area. So all in all, we've received quite a bit of money for infrastructure improvements for the city.
All right. Thank you very much, Commissioner Williams. Councilmember Oliver has a few questions.
Yes, Commissioner, when you said the South Market, are you referring to the wetlands? When you?
No, this is for the development of the opposite side of the riverfront. So the Riverfront 2 development, basically the expansion of the sewer system for the future development of that, the Riverside East.
So we would be, I'm just trying to get my bearings together. So you're talking about celebrations used to be on that side. Would that be correct? Before you go into ShopRite, all of that area right there would be the east side. Coming down A Street, is that correct?
Yeah,
Okay.
So the sewer capacity and in all of that area can only handle a certain amount of future development. And so we need to engineer and redesign a new system to handle, we need to anticipate a certain amount of growth and look at what we need to do to basically decide how much future growth we can handle. So that $4.8 million is to design and engineer and address phase 3. We can handle phase 1 and phase 2 of the anticipated development, but we cannot handle phase 3 of the anticipated development. So this money is to, engineer how to handle phase 3 of that development.
May I continue?
Yes, please.
Could you tell me the status of the wetlands project period? I know that it was worked on. Has that been completed on the other side?
So
South
the
Hill
second
Street.
wetlands is that the phase 1 of the park is completed.
Okay,
Phase 2, the actual sewer separation has begun on A Street. So A Street's sewer separation will be occurring over the next year. So A Street will be closed or partially closed for the next year, and that's where the bulk of the engineering underground will happen. And we are separating the stormwater from, the sewer so that the stormwater can go straight out into the river and or into the wetlands park, and then the sewer water can go straight to our wastewater treatment plant. And that's where the bulk of the flooding mitigation can happen. And so that's happening right now. It started on A Street and will take about the next year to complete in construction.
thank you.
Yep.
You have a question,
Yes, I
Councilmember
do.
McCoy? All right.
Thank you, Chair. Commissioner Williams, I would just wanted to ask about the $18 million that we received for the water main, was a replacement, and looks like lead removal. So all of this infrastructure, I know that we actually already put into, we made certain that we looked at our budget, and because we knew this is something that needed to be done. The $18 million, did it match or exceed what we were actually already looking to do when it comes to our budget, when it came to how we were gonna, replace these mains? That
So
amount.
it actually matched what we were planning to do. These were plans that we had in our capital improvement plan over the next 2 to 6 years. And for the first time in history, the state is giving us what we call principal forgiveness to do the project. So normally we would go to the state and borrow the $18 million and get an SRF loan. They, in this round, they're actually going to let us borrow it, but then they're going to give it back to us in principal forgiveness. And that's the first time in history that they've ever done that. And that's a result of the money that they're getting at the federal level.
That's good to hear. May I follow, please?
Yes, please.
Okay. And so I think my other question was basically, you said this is a 2 to 6 year project. Could you expound how much longer, or what is the percentage rather? That's a better question. Like, what's the percentage that we've actually already replaced now compared to what we all already have within the city of Wilmington? How much has been replaced?
So 70% of our infrastructure is more than 75 years old, and we have a goal of replacing between 1% and 2% of our underground infrastructure every year. So over the next 6 years, our goal is to replace between 6 and 10% of the infrastructure that is underground. We do have a mandate by the EPA to identify almost all of our lead infrastructure by a certain date. I think that date is in the next 5 years. So we have a requirement to go out and I actually physically identify where all the lead is and to have a plan to replace that lead. So that's what we'll be focused on over the next 6 years. But just to give you a sense of what we've been doing in the last decade, every single time that we've identified lead, while we've been replacing the 1 to 1.5% of our old infrastructure, anytime we've seen lead, we've immediately replaced it all the way up to the customer's house. We've not ignored it. We've proactively replaced it, even though we've never regulatorily been required to. So we are way ahead of the game with respect to replacing lead, unlike most municipalities out there. So we have put ourselves in a very good position with respect to replacing these lead pipes compared to other municipal water utilities out there. We're in a very, very good place. We have a lot less to replace because of our good practices that we've had over the last decade.
Thank you. That's good to hear.
Yeah.
I need to follow up.
Yes, Councilman.
Now, I wanted to follow up. I know Councilman, Ms. Bassner had sent the article, which was on TV, regarding the crisis in Jackson, Mississippi, realizing the pathway that's aging our water and sewer infrastructure. So I'm just glad to hear that we are taking steps to, be prepared for what may occur in the future with the infrastructure to avoid what happened in Jackson, to avoid it occurring here in Wilmington. So I'm glad to hear that we are working on our infrastructure, our water and sewer, et cetera, to make sure we all have clean water in the future.
Yeah, we in Wilmington are lucky in quite a few ways. First of all, we have 2 sources of water. We have 2 water treatment plants. So we have the one at Porter, which is up on 202, but then we also have the Brandywine plant. So there's a redundancy there. If one plant gets in trouble, we have another one that can switch on immediately. We also have 2 sources of water. So not only do we have the Brandywine River that supplies us our water, but we also have a backup source, which is the Hoops Reservoir. So if there's ever a problem, like today where it was rainy and the water was murky in the Brandywine River, we automatically switch to Hoops Reservoir, which gives us our second source of water. So we in the city of Wilmington are very, very well positioned to, I knock on wood, never get into the place of, where Jackson, Mississippi is. It's a horrible crisis out there. I feel terrible for those constituents and the people, and for the water utility. But we have really proactively in the last 15 years or so been investing in our infrastructure. We've been doing a 6-year plan. We have been paying attention to our capital improvements, and that's where we, the water utility, works together with you, council, and with the mayor, and come together and we present to you and say, hey, this is why we need a 3%, a 4%, a 5% water increase, to address the water infrastructure that's 70, 75 years old. And we appreciate the fact that you listen to us and let us do our jobs and do what we need to do to keep things running, because it is very complicated and it can go sideways very quickly. So we appreciate you, City Council, for listening to us and letting us do what we need to do. So thank you.
First, I'll turn it to members of the public if there's any questions, comments. I'm seeing none. Thank you very much, Commissioner Williams. I guess the final question is, do we have an update regarding the Infrastructure Reinvestment Act from DC? I know we've mentioned it previously. We were expecting a tranche of funds through the state. Has that money been allocated yet, or do we have a ballpark figure of what that will look like?
Well, so we have the one earmark that, from Senator Carper for the South Market Street redevelopment. I've been hearing rumblings of some other earmarks that are coming our way, but I haven't heard anything official.
I mean, so it's not like, was it the old CARES Act where, we get $30 million or something like that? Is that process not like that for these funds?
No, I mean, the process on the water side, I mean, that's where you see us getting, $18 million for main replacement and, $5 million for, emerging contaminants. On the sewer side, there'll be a similar process. That hasn't started yet. That's starting a little bit later than the water side. As roads and sidewalks, those numbers are not, it's not going to look like that. There's going to be all these projects out there that we're beginning to apply for, but it's like, I have to compete with every state in the country for some small grants here and there, and it's a very competitive process. So I don't know, what Delaware will get, especially when I'm competing with, every state in the country. It's not sort of divvied up. It's not like Delaware gets a certain amount and Maryland gets a certain amount and New York gets a certain amount. It's more like there's, $100 million for road improvement, and then everybody has to sort of compete for what's available. And so, we have to put together a plan and a project and then apply for it. And we are doing that. It's just much more competitive when you do it that way.
And you may not have the answer to this one, but is trying to add green sources of power. Is that going to be included in possible infrastructure bidding, such as electric charging stations, those things?
Yeah, so that's gonna come through the state, and you'll hear a lot of that, you know, that will be the state coming to talk to us about. So that will be, you know, they'll have conversations with us, and they'll have, you know, they'll have money to do this or to do that, and they'll want us to participate in that. But that'll be a conversation with, you know, the STENREC or the state agency wanting us to participate in whatever it is they have money for. But the state always gets the money first, and then it may trickle down to the city.
All right. All right, thank you very much, Commissioner Williams. Pleasure as always.
Thank you.
And if there's nothing else from members of council, we'll keep moving through the agenda. Agenda item 3 is an ordinance to amend Chapter 2 of the City Code, clarifying the funding of appropriations from the budget reserve account, the tax stabilization account, water sewer fund, and the water sewer fund rate stabilization account. This is being presented more of a housekeeping matter, just clarifying, especially what we've been doing with the American Rescue Funds and how everything is appropriated. This is really a housekeeping measure. Is there anyone from the administration here to speak on this?
This is Brett Taylor from the Department of Finance.
All right, floor is yours, Director.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the Finance Committee. Essentially, you characterized this correctly in terms of it being a housekeeping matter. This was an issue that was brought up during the FY 21 development of the financial statements. Our auditors had noticed that there was some clarity that needed to be included in the city code with respect to how we would structure reserve funds. If you recall, on the general fund side, after your assets minus your liabilities, you establish a fund balance. Now, several years ago, we adopted legislation to take what was considered unassigned fund balance and to establish it into a reserve for a effectively a tax stabilization reserve. We need to clean up some of the language with regard to how the flow of funds would fall after you have your assets, after you minus out your liabilities, you get your fund balance. We automatically take 10% of that and we tuck it away into the budget reserve account. Then the balance of that would go to the rate stabilization account. Now, there's issues with respect to how we account for certain assets and certain liabilities that could make that fund balance go up or down. This legislation clarifies those positions in that it provides what we call exemptions. And these are exemptions to appropriations. These exemptions fall into changes in debt service, changes into asset classes, and some of the accounting specifics that go into the development of the financial statements. On the water sewer side, it is a similar corollary. You have your assets minus your liabilities, and in effect, we would take the funds from what was considered then unassigned net position. They don't call it a fund balance, they call it a net position, and put it into an operating and maintenance reserve, in which equals 17% of the next fiscal year's expenditures. Once we seed that money into that reserve account, that O&M reserve, then those funds flow to what we call a rate stabilization account. In both cases, the tax stabilization account on the general fund side and the rate stabilization account on the water sewer side, monies that are taken from those accounts have to be, in effect, appropriated. This requires, and the legislation is very specific about the requirements for that. The mayor has to make the request, the city council has to approve it, and the like. The clarification, the housekeeping rule, is that how do you determine how much is going to be in that rate stabilization and that tax stabilization amount based on the accounting functions? So we needed to clarify that. So essentially what would happen is at the end of the close of the books in FY22 and going forward, you would first seed the money into the budget reserve account, the O&M reserve accounts on the water sewer side. Then those flows of funds would go to the tax stabilization and the rate stabilization. If those monies go down in a given year over the prior year, they have to be because of an accounting nuance, of a set of accounting transactions. We have assured our auditors that we wouldn't be dipping into the rate stabilization account or the tax stabilization account for anything that would be considered what we call appropriated. So again, it's a housekeeping item. We need to have this in place for our 22 budget closeout or financial statement closeout. And I hope you will support the legislation.
And just briefly, Director Taylor, I assume this is supported by Treasurer Sims since it's changing at least how the investments for the water sewer fund, I guess, are parceled out?
Yes. It will not necessarily change the investment profile. Again, we're not going to be taking funds away. These will be funds that are placed in the operating reserve and the budget reserve, so they're set. The rate stabilization and the tax stabilization reserves are determined after the books are closed, so those monies are set. They stay in the investment accounts until such time as they're appropriated. So both, Treasurer Sims, the administration, and City Council will know, would have to come together and talk about pulling money from those accounts if for anything other than the exceptions that are in the legislation.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much, Director. Turning it to members of the public, if there's any comments. All right. Seeing none, I'll turn it back to council. I do believe Ms. Beth Knight has a question.
Brett, I just had one question for you. With the legislation, I noticed that one of the items that has been tweaked is to add the word exemptions as far as when it comes to appropriations, and I noticed that's throughout the entire legislation. Is that for a particular reason? Like, I'm assuming so, meaning we want to exempt like pension liability, the annual true-up with the agreement between the city and Newcastle County. So was that very important for us to have that listed as an exemption? I didn't know like what was the background behind that.
That is really the essence of the clarification, Marshall.
Okay.
When you're finalizing the transactions for the financial statements, again, it's the sum total of the activity that has happened during the year. At the end of the year, oftentimes we have a pension liability. These are things that we don't have a whole lot of control over. For instance, a pension liability, more pensioners may have retired, for instance, and therefore the payouts are going to be a little greater. Therefore, in that case, you'll see some accounting treatment that may, in fact, lower the fund balance or lower the net position. Likewise, there may be some debt principal payments that come on board. For instance, if we do a ban in the middle of the year, obviously our debt service is going to go up. That means that our budgetary resources will go down. Debt payments, like a ban, are appropriated. They, in fact, they have to go through an ordinance to make that happen, but they are mid-year transactions. They ultimately may impact the amount of fund balance that you would have at the end of the day in order for you to populate the reserve accounts. So we needed to have some exemptions in there that would allow us some accounting flexibility without impinging on council's and the administration's ability, obligation to have an ordinance in which you are appropriating those funds.
But Mr. Chair?
Yes, please.
The annual true-up, that's not going to deviate too much from the agreement, or could that be a substantial change, or not necessarily?
I don't suspect it'll be a substantial change. However, there's some nuances with it. The annual true-up may be because of inflated costs of materials. In that case, we would have to, that might be a reduction in revenue. That may be something that gets translated into the Newcastle County sewer agreements or the sewer payments from Newcastle County, for instance. They may go up or down, depending on, and those are things that during the course of the year, you don't really have all that much control, and you won't know that until you do the transactions at the end of the year. But in essence, I don't suspect that we're going to be, the margins are going to be very, very small if they do go up or down.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Director. Since this is an ordinance, it needs to be formally voted out of committee. I'll just ask for a voice call vote on this. All those members of the Finance Committee who are present are in favor, say aye.
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 Are there any opposed? All right, the ayes have it, and ordinance 22038 will be on the full council agenda. I believe it's going to be next September 15th. Thank you very much, Director.
And, Chairman, who?
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Moved in second.
Oh,
Second.
forgot about that. It was seconded by Councilmember Oliver. All right.
Okay, thank you.
Excellent. All right, moving right along to the rest of the agenda, we have ordinance -2235, an ordinance to amend Chapter 2 of the City Code regarding appointed service employees residency requirement. I believe the prime sponsor is Council President Congo, and this is administration-supported ordinance as well. Council President Congo, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, Chairman Johnson. Yes, this is this ordinance did come from the administration. I do agree with it. It will, right now, those employees who are appointed are required to live within city limits. This would lift that requirement. So right now, just to give everyone some context, once a mayor is voted in, once the council body, the body is voted in, they are given the duty to hire their leadership team. And again, right now, they have to live within the city limits. It does put them at risk if they live out of the city limits and they come into the city to work, to accept the job. I believe they have 6 months to live within Wilmington city limits. Again, this would lift that requirement. It does, right now, I think they are at risk because if they do move in from outside of the city, they oftentimes have to move their families, their children have to change school, and they're really at the pleasure of council and of the administration. And especially with the administration, because at least on council, they are protected a little more because as a body, we have to hire and fire, whereas on the administrative side, the mayor has that ability to hire and fire. So this does would give them some freedom to live outside of city limits. And I'll take any concerns or any questions. I believe, is anyone here from the administration wants to speak to it?
President Congo, I am here to answer any questions.
Yes, yes, Director
I
Barnes, floor is yours.
I do concur with what President Congo said. Appointed employees are required to live in the city, and appointed employees do not have, they are at-will employees, so they don't have the job security that a merit employee has. And so typically when you're trying to attract talent to the city, you're able to say, okay, well, you know, not only to the city, but to government agencies, period. Oh, well, you know, you can get a pension or you can get this. Well, if you're an appointed employee and it's only for 4 years, you're not vested enough to even get a pension. And oftentimes they are moving at, you know, uprooting their families and moving sometimes at a loss, if you will, and then only guaranteed a job for 4 years. So this is something that is supported by the administration. I can hopefully answer any questions of council.
I have a question.
Yes, Councilmember.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Someone had brought it, had emailed me regarding about appointed position, but then what occurs with her husband. It's nothing in the language that says if they're both city employees and she's appointed, and if she wanted to move out of the city, what occurs? Where's the language that mentions anything about it's okay for her husband to relocate with her? And I thought that was a good question. So if anyone can answer that question.
Councilman Oliver, the legislation does not speak to anyone but the appointed employee. So if both spouses are appointed, both spouses can move outside of the city. But if one person is appointed and the spouse is married and the spouse has not met their 5-year requirement, then the spouse is not eligible to move outside the city according to this legislation at this time.
Thank you.
As a follow-up, Director, so in that situation, I don't know the specific individual, but the parties could potentially live, I mean, they would have to stay in the city essentially, unless they live separately.
They, potentially, yes. So if we're talking about like the person is appointed can move outside the city irrespective of the number of years. The spouse, if they also work for the city, would have to wait the 5 years if they're married. So that is correct.
And just as another housekeeping measure, would this be retroactive or would this be prospective? I couldn't tell from the language of the actual ordinance, but would this apply for folks who are currently appointed, or would this then only be for future appointments? Because the way I'm seeing the effectiveness, again, someone from law department, I'm not sure if they're on, it says effective upon passage, but it doesn't say anything about retroactive.
I think that's a question that would be better placed with the law department.
Okay, is there
Yeah.
anyone from law department on, or
Chairman, I know.
Ms. Bass Knight?
Yes,
you have
I'm
clar-
sorry. No one is on from law, but there was a question for them when this legislation was drafted, and the way it was explained to me, it would be for the for existing appointed staff as well as new employees that would be hired. That's how it was explained to me from the law department.
Yeah.
And
So Ms. Bass, I think
Yes.
that's still an open question. I just, without law department, again, I'm not standing in for law department, but being, legally trained, I think it maybe needs some cleanup to it because it's not clear on its face.
I like that.
And if the court was to interpret it or somebody, I think there might be some questions. Councilmember Oliver?
No, just wanted to reiterate, I guess basically what two people have stated, the law department should be on because that is not clear and this is a major piece of legislation. So we do need to get some clarity on that. I wouldn't want to vote on something I'm not clear about the question that you just asked.
All right, Vice Chair Harley. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Before I make my statement, as it relates to the conversation at hand, as we all know, that legislation is to be interpreted the way it's written. So if this passes and it is retroactive, it definitely should be included, because I would not automatically think that. So that's my 2 cents as it relates to that. But I raised my hand to bring up the topic at hand, the legislation at hand. So one, I do think that us opening up the pool for more talent outside of Wilmington is a great ideal. But at the same time, I do think that there is something to be said for opportunities for Wilmingtonians as well. I've been getting questions from both sides, where some individuals feel as though that's a great thing for the city of Wilmington, and I think it's a great thing for the city of Wilmington as well. But my question that I wanted to put on the floor this evening is this: do we think that we should just make it a blanket statement that all appointed positions does not have to reside in Wilmington, or maybe a percentage? And a percentage meaning, I'm just saying hypothetically, 50% of the jobs that are appointed have to be in Wilmington, and then the other 50%, could be open to other residents. And again, I'm putting it out there because there are a number of people that have shared with me that they do understand wanting to get more talent, more qualified talent, whatever way you want to put it, but at the same time feel as though that if individuals are making money from taxpayers in Wilmington, that we should have a number of people in leadership positions living in the city of Wilmington.
Director Barnes, do you have a response?
I guess my response would be that the code still does require and have a preference for city residents. So even though the legislation says that the appointed person does not have to live in the city code does still have a preference for hiring of city residents. And also, just because it allows you to appoint someone that does not live in the city doesn't mean you can appoint someone that lives in the city. It's just giving the freedom, the flexibility to expand, as Councilmember Harley said, to expand the talent pool. There is still a preference for city residents, and that does not go away.
Thank you, Director Barnes. But again, if there is not something in the code that says, okay, we're at the mark of 50%, we still could end up with individuals, not living in the city of Wilmington. And like I said, I totally agree that this is a opportunity for us to get more talent, but I also think that this is an opportunity to make Wilmingtonians feel like that they do have the advantage, that they do have the upper hand. So when we think about 50%, I mean, that's still a whole lot more than what we are allowing today. So, again, based on some of the feedback that I receive from individuals, Wilmingtonians, within my district and some individuals from other districts as well, that was pretty much the consensus that I received. And I wanted to present it, to the committee and to share it, with those of you that are on the call that are from the administration, to let you know what I'm hearing and what I thought could be a win-win for us getting more, more talent, and also making Wilmingtonians feel like, they still have a chance, as it relates to the code.
All right, I'll turn next to a few council members with their hands raised. Councilmember Darby, I believe you're first.
Yes. Yes, thank you, Council Chair. With this specific legislation, I do think that people have said a lot of great benefits to opening the pool, but I also see here in the legislation, it says the city has struggled to find and retain qualified candidates to fill appointed service positions. So my question is, what does recruitment look like, or what has been the focus to try to get more Wilmingtonians? Because I'm afraid of appointed positions all being people who are not from Wilmingtonian, who are not Wilmingtonians, who are driving from outside of the city to come here to make decisions that impacts Wilmingtonians. And I think that becomes an issue or problem. And I think we see that a lot in other parts of our city government, where the majority of the people are not Wilmingtonians, and they come in with a lot of biases and stereotypes and in regards to how they treat Wilmingtonians. So my question would be, what can we do to increase the recruitment here for the city to finding and retaining? And what has it been historically to finding, other than just posting that you're looking for this position? What has taken place for the recruitment for Wilmingtonians specifically?
Okay, I see Chief of Staff Washington and Director Barnes. Director Barnes, you want to answer first, and then Chief of Staff Washington.
I will. I'll offer this. I just want to remind everyone that we're talking about appointed positions. And in the city, there's approximately 75 appointed positions, 4 of which are appointed by the treasurer, 14 of which are appointed by city council, and the remaining 57 would be appointed by the mayor's office. And of that, I want to say that easily 14 of them are attorneys within the law department. So what I can speak to in terms of recruitment efforts, I can't speak to what happens on the council side and how they, attract or try to recruit talent, or even the treasurer's office. I can speak to the administration in terms of, and I'll let the chief of staff speak to this even more broadly, that when you're looking to attract talent or attract people to positions, I do know definitely at various points throughout over the past 6 years, there's been difficulty in attracting individuals for technical level positions, and the people that was interested in the position were people that lived outside the city. So we kind of had the double whammy that our salaries for what we're asking them is not competitive, and then we're asking them to uproot and move into the city. The recruitment efforts have been expansive across some of the technical trade organizations. It has been looking for people across other governments, because to be quite honest, if you're looking for a license and inspection commissioner, they're typically just not someone that's, has that skill set. That's something that's pretty technical, or even planning. I would even say law is not as easy to attract and retain. Someone with government finance, you can find a finance person, certainly, finance persons, there's a plethora of people out there, but government accounting is far different than corporate accounting. So it's a broad net that's cast. And again, to answer your question, Councilmember Darby, a broad net is cast. It's not just the posting of the position. It is in some of the trade magazines. It is some of the networking. It's in some of the, in some instances, we've even done executive searches for individuals within the administration. Use a firm to do an executive search. So it's not just like posting the position. Regarding Councilmember Harley's suggestion around perhaps 50%, I would caution against using, such an arbitrary number to say maybe 50% of the appointed individuals, because what if you come across a position or a candidate that is really a desirable candidate that has everything you need, but you've already reached the 50% of the people that could be external individuals, and now you don't have the ability to attract and quite honestly hire the best person for the job. Because you have this arbitrary number out there that says I can't go over 50%. So I would caution you. I think what we should be focused on is getting the best talent in the roles to do the best work for the city of Wilmington, to move the city forward. And again, I still put out there that the code has a preference for residents. So, you know, when you're taking candidates that are comparable, that are equal, you know, the code requires the nod go to the city resident. The preference goes to the city resident. So I would surmise that we're taking care of the residents in that regard. And I'll turn it over to the Chief of Staff for any comments she may have.
Chief of Staff Washington.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just basically reiterate what Director Barnes said. And I just want to point you to section 40-4 in the legislation that speaks to preference for employment of residents. And then basically what it says is the department and each appointed authority in the city government, including the mayor and department heads and the director, shall grant a preference for the employment in the appointed and classified services applicants for those individuals who are living within the city residence at the time. So Director Barnes is correct, and that is our preference, is to hire Wilmington residents. So that's not changed. But there will be times when you have to, you know, cast the net further and actually hire someone outside of the city limits.
Yes, Councilmember Dory.
Yeah, so my next question is, looking at all the other large cities or cities like Newark, Dover, Seaford, other cities, do they have the same residency requirement like we do, or could I go get appointed in Newark at a position in the city of Newark? Are you familiar with any other residency requirements throughout the state of other large cities?
If you're talking about the state, we have a residency requirement. Others do not. It is my understanding that we have a residency requirement, others do not. I believe with Newcastle County, you have to live within Newcastle County. That's a broader net. But Dover does not have a residency requirement. Milford does not have a residency requirement. Ellesmere, you know.
Okay, thank you. That was my question.
Sure.
Councilmember Spadola.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think Ms. Barnes' comments really hit the nail on the head with this. And I think if we should also look at the broader context of the economy, and that it is a job seekers market out there. You know, the employees have the advantage when they're negotiating with a company. And right now, for these highly technical, highly skilled positions, not only are we saying you have to come to the office 5 days a week, but you have to uproot your family and move into the city. And they're going to be like, well, I can, not only did my other offer not make me move, but I can work from my couch 3 days out of the week. You know, and these are positions that have zero job security as well. So that's a big risk for somebody to take when there's no protections for them. And frankly, you know, when we think about, you know, the next chief of police or the next L&I commissioner, you know, if that L&I commissioner has a lot of experience in other L&I departments throughout the country, dealing with some of the slumlords, cleaning up some of these bad houses, who cares if he wants to live on 3 acres in Middletown? If he's going to do good work for the city and we're going to get a good return on our investment, I think that's where our focus should be. Thank you.
I have a question, Director Barnes. So is it a hypothetical, that same hypothetical, would it be possible to have a police chief that lives in Middletown if this passed?
The police chief is an appointed position, and so hypothetically, if that were the will of the mayor, he could appoint a police chief that lived in Middletown, yes.
And just a brief follow-up, would it be possible, and again, this is my first time seeing the language, to amend it so that certain positions were exempted from this exemption? So if we put in there certain classifications, you know, police chief, fire chief, other individuals are excluded from this change.
And I like to.
Is that doable?
I would,
Yeah, I don't know what the legal implications are of that.
Okay. I mean, because I'm just throwing it out there, I'm very uncomfortable
That's-
with this. I can say it on record, I don't want a police chief that doesn't live,
exactly what I'm saying.
that lives in like Middletown, for instance, even though they may be qualified, it's a very difficult pill to swallow. Now, I am receptive if this could be amended such a way that certain positions can't be included in this, then I'm comfortable with it. So I'm just putting that out there, just where I'm at right now.
No, I like
so
to.
I can understand that, Councilmember Johnson, and I'm sorry for interrupting, but that exists now. That exists now, that you can appoint a police chief that lives outside the city. This police chief lives inside the city. When he was hired, it was his first entree into the city. But if we were to hire someone that was an internal candidate to be the next police chief, it's likely they live outside the city. And it's not required that they move inside the city to be the police chief. The same thing with fire. You have a fire chief, and then there's 2 deputy chiefs. And we historically, well, heretofore, our fire chief has come from this, within, and the deputies have come from within. And they don't, because they have the tenure of more than 5 years, they don't necessarily have to live inside the city. So I just want to make sure that it's clear that right now, the situation exists where you could have a police chief or a fire chief or deputy chiefs or inspectors within the police department that don't live in the city.
Okay, council member.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to ask President Congo, could we hold this piece of legislation until we follow up with the proper law department? Because Chris, just to say, he's asking, could we amend it? He's not acting as an attorney at this point, and I would just feel more comfortable to have the law department review that part about the
Retroactivity.
Yeah, retroact, that's the only part. So I'm asking the president, could we hold this, since we have a long agenda, and talk to the law department?
I guess I'll try to get the opinion of Director Barnes and Chief of Staff Washington, because I guess I've always understood that once a law went into effect, it went into effect, and unless it speaks to a specific concern as far as it wouldn't go into effect until a certain date, I think that it would
That's what I'm
be
saying there.
retroactive.
May I follow up? That's what I'm saying.
I've never heard of a law that did otherwise. But I guess I like the opinion of Director Barnes and
Could you clear that up?
Chief of Staff Washington.
Well, I'll defer to the chief of staff. I don't know that I'm here to say whether it should be held or not held. What I can say is that if you are appointed now and the legislation says it is effective upon the date of passage, if I am an appointed person now and it exempts me from living in the city, then I wouldn't have to live in the city. So it applies to an appointed person, and the legislation says appointed person would not have to live in the city. So if I fit the category of an appointed person, then that means that I wouldn't have to live in the city.
Right, that's how I understand it also.
Yeah, and I would tend to agree with that, and actually, just in my small text with the city solicitor, he believes it's for existing appointees as well.
And again, without someone from the law department on, that's not the way I would read it. But again, I would, at this time, if there is a motion to table this legislation, I would entertain that motion.
I'd like to put in a motion to table ordinance 22035 until I hear from the law department.
Second.
Okay.
All
Okay, Mr. Chair,
have to
can
take a
I
vote.
finish?
At this time, the only thing on the table is the motion to table this ordinance. I believe the proper thing is first, I guess, if there's any debate on this specific motion, I think that would be proper at this time.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. The only debate is, I'm definitely in favor of it. I would just like the law department to be here so we can have some clarity on that question, and the law department is not here, and to say we're talking to this person, that person, that's what the law department is for. So until we just talk to the law department, that's what my debate would be.
And Vice Chair Harley? On this motion?
I agree, but I do have another question, but I'm going to follow your, what you're trying to accomplish here. So I'm in agreement with getting the legislation right. So yes, I agree to hold it.
And same thing here, again, I'm supportive of this. It's just, this is a major step and I want to get it right because I think about not us sitting here in the chairs, not this mayor,
Right.
not this council, but
Correct.
someone down the line, they want to hire a police chief that doesn't live in Wilmington. I have a big problem with that, but under this law, you're allowed to do that. So with that, is there any other debate just on this motion part? All right. Seeing none, this time, I'll take a roll call vote. Councilmember Oliver?
No.
I
I'm
mean,
saying, I'm saying.
The motion is to table.
Oh, yes, I moved the motion. Yes,
Right.
to table it, yes.
Vice Chair
Sorry.
Harley, 4th District.
Yes.
Councilmember Field, 8th District.
Yes.
Councilmember Spadola.
Yes.
And Council President Congo.
No.
All right. Looks like the yeas have it, and this ordinance will be tabled, and I think it'll give us the time to make the appropriate, language changes, and it can be brought back up. Thank you very much.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Director
Yes.
Barnes. You have anything in closing?
this is Councilmember Harley.
Oh, sorry. Sorry, Councilmember Harley. Yes.
Yes, well, so I kind of like opened up this whole conversation. I'm just trying to get back to asking one or two questions because this is a committee meeting and this is where I want to get answers. So when we talk about appointed positions, I hear what everyone is saying and I'm very open to it as well. But when we talk about appointed positions, we're seeing that the advantage is given to Wilmingtonians. Now, on the administrative side, doesn't the mayor appoint individuals and doesn't the treasurer appoint individuals in their different departments? Isn't the mayor the one that makes the final decision? I'm not talking about the chief of police. I'm talking about L&I commissioner, public works commissioner. Isn't that the mayor the person? I'm just
Vice
trying
Chair
to get
Harley,
an understanding in terms.
Yes.
Sorry,
Yeah.
I don't want to interrupt. That is a loaded question, Vice Chair Harley. I think.
No, it's a yes or no.
Well-
It's a yes or no.
If you can answer briefly, Director.
Point of order, Council President. Point of order.
I believe that this is tabled, so we can't have further discussion.
Yeah, and so again, I want to give you the opportunity, Vice Chair Harley. We have noted this question and we can get this answer swiftly. Again, I think we have the path forward for this. Okay.
I
Mr.
disagree.
Chair.
I disagree, but I'm gonna, because you're the chairperson, I'm gonna let you, be the chair and be in charge. But I was the one that opened it up and it went in different directions and I gave everybody the respect to allow them to say what they wanted to say. Now, I'm just trying to make sure that I'm getting the right answers that I need in a committee meeting. That's all. I'm not trying to prolong the meeting, but if we're talking about appointed positions, we're talking about one or two individuals appointing people. We're not talking about a group of people. So we got to be very thoughtful in terms of what we're voting on. That's all I have to say, and you can move forward.
So noted, Vice Chair. Thank you very much. And again, we'll take these. I think some more tweaking has to be done. Ms. Bass Knight has all the follow-up questions, and we'll get them answered before next committee hearing. Okay. But thank you very much, and let's move swiftly on the next item on the agenda. Ordinance 22-33 will actually be held by a sponsor. Okay. Moving to the next ordinance, ordinance 22-029, ordinance to amend chapter 40, section 4341A of the city code to mirror the state's policy regarding paid parental leave. I believe the prime sponsor, Councilmember Darby, is here. The floor is yours.
Yes, so I am actually going to hold this piece of legislation too.
Okay. All right. So noted, Councilmember Darby. The next item on the agenda is a resolution encouraging the administration to provide ARPA funds to Wilmington Senior Center and Fame Incorporated. The prime sponsor on this piece is Councilmember Darby. Floor is yours.
Yes, thank you. Well, as most people know, or if you've been following, ARPA funds, the decision to how they're spent is only made by the executive branch with recommendations from city council and proposals submitted by entities who would like funding. I had several second district entities request funding, the Wilmington Senior Center and Fame, which was, one was $1.3 million, and I believe another one was around 1 point something too. So they're asking for an amount that I cannot fund with the only $100K that they gave per city council person from the ARPA funds. So I'm asking for the Wilmington Senior Center, which is the only senior center in the city of Wilmington that service seniors, and Fame, which is a educational program within the city who's in the second district, and they have a learning lab that they're trying to establish for the city. So I am asking for the mayor administration to support both of these entities. They both received letters denying with no reason to why they're being denied the funds. So I am looking to get these two funded. It doesn't have to be the full amount, but something to help them out, as we have not anything focused on the seniors. And Fame has been a earmark in our community for decades. And I believe that the city should support them, and the second district should be allocated funds from the bigger pot of money than just the $100K that I was given.
Council President Congo?
Yes, thank you, Council Chair, Chairman Johnson. I do agree. If there is a technicality where the administration isn't allowed to support these two entities throughout because of whatever rules surround the ARPA funds, I would like to see that in writing. But these two entities definitely deserve major funding. Fame is preparing our youth, especially black and brown youth, in STEM, and that we all know that is the wave of the future. So I think that they have to have all of the tools necessary to support those children. And just going, it's kind of, I don't understand why we wouldn't support our only senior center. But again, if there is a reason that we're not allowed to, I would just like to have that in writing so that we can figure out something differently. But definitely in support of this resolution.
Councilmember McCoy?
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to make a correction that Wilmington Senior Center is not the city of Wilmington's only senior center. I have Claymore Senior Center in Byard Square. So I just wanted to make that note.
Yes. Can I clarify?
Councilmember Darby?
Yeah, I'm not saying it's the only senior center or entity that helps seniors. Wilmington Senior Center is the oldest and most historical one in our city, and they are the Wilmington Senior Center, so they are one of the major historic entities in our community. So I'm not saying they're the only one, because there's other entities or organizations that offer senior centers. And there's no senior center that has received ARPA funds at all.
All right, Councilmember Spadola.
These are two great organizations. I have a question for the sponsor. There's no amount in this resolution. Is this asking for them, for their proposal to be funded in full, or just to be considered and perhaps get a piece of what they're asking for?
Either or, but at least considered, and not just received a letter with no explanation to why they're not getting funded.
Thank
you. Vice Chair Harley?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I wanted to know, have they received any ARPA funds at all, and if yes, how much?
The Wilmington Senior Center and Fame have not received ARPA funds. Their request, they received a letter of denial, and it had no reason to why, and both of them reached out to me asking why they were denied. I had a meeting with the mayor administration and they're not able to give me clear reasons why or what the disqualifications were for those two pieces of, those two entities.
Okay,
quick
Chief
follow-up,
of Staff
Mr. Chair.
Washington.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, so just to be clear, they did receive a denial letter, but I did speak with the gentleman from Fame, so he absolutely understands that we receive numerous requests for funding. We have not approved any funding for any educational institute, not in ARPA and not under the mayor's grants. So that, you know, just the sheer volume of grant applications that we received and the amount that they were asking for precluded us from approving any grant for them. But in addition to that, I do know that the Wilmington Senior Center did receive state bond bill money. And if I'm not mistaken, I do believe they received grants from City Council as well.
All right, and Vice Chair Hartley.
Yes, my follow-up question was that I recall hearing on the floor Thursday night that seniors can sign up for membership from the second district only. So I was under the assumption that they did receive some grants from the ARPA funds. This question is for Councilmember Darby.
No, I use my discretionary funds to put aside a fund for seniors in the second district.
Okay, all right, that's what I wanted to know. Thank you. That's all I have.
All right, are there, at this time, are there any comments from members of the public? Okay, all right, seeing none, I'll turn it back to members of council for any final words on this. All right, seeing none, since this is a resolution, it does not need to be voted on out of committee, and I believe it'll be placed on the next council agenda. I guess that would be September 15th. All right, thank you very much. Now moving on to the next agenda item, it's a resolution encouraging the administration not to fund Gibraltar. Its council member, its prime sponsor is Councilmember Darby. Floor is yours.
Yes, so as you said, this resolution opposes the appropriation of funding to this mansion. It's accommodating land and the structures by the city of Wilmington or through state bonds at this time. So the community over in the 8th District, they organized and they were against the current plans for Gibraltar Mansion. They reached out and they frequently email City Council, and they are asking for this to not happen and for them to be at the table around conversations in regards to what happens with this estate. So I am pushing this forward.
Any comments, Councilmember Field? I know that's your district. Any brief comments?
Yes, so I appreciate the interest in Gibraltar. Of all the issues that have come up on city council in my district since I've been on for a year and a half, this has attracted significant attention, and it's probably the #1 issue that has occupied my time on city council in terms of representing constituents in the 8th District. And I've had probably at least 100 or 150 conversations with anybody that has expressed interest in potential plans for Gibraltar. And I don't know who they is, but I don't, you know, anybody that has, you know, I just don't see what the purpose of this resolution is. Somebody might have an opinion against the city getting money from the state of Delaware, but I'm against this. I don't think it is needed, and that's all I will say.
All right, Chief of Staff Washington, comment?
Yes, it's a point of clarification because I see the resolution says encouraging the administration not to fund Gibraltar. And I just wanted to clarify that this money came from the state bond bill appropriation, and there's specific epilogue language on how you spend the money. So this is not city money per se. This is not city bond bill money. This is a state bond bill appropriation to the city for Gibraltar.
Thank you very much for that clarification. Did you have a question, Ms. Bentley?
No, I just want to state, because, I mean, our staff did, draft this, but in the fourth, and the now, in the further resolve clause, it does mention the city of Wilmington ARC through the state bonds at this time. I just wanted to clarify that as well.
Okay, very well. We'll turn it to members of the public for any comments. All right, seeing none, this is a resolution, so it will, does not need to be voted out of committee, and it will be placed on the council agenda at the discretion of the sponsor. All right. Moving forward, we'll then turn to the last agenda item, I believe, is a resolution establishing a special committee of council, fines and fees special committee. The council member on that resolution is Councilmember Darby, so floor is yours, ma'am.
Yes, yes. So just to give people a little update on this resolution, so the city of Wilmington was selected, and we are part of a national fees and fines program where we were given a $50,000 grant, and we'll be working with people on refining our fees and fines. And one piece of it that is really important is establishing a task force and having a special task force that is, a mixture of the administration, city council, and the community leaders and organizations to look at fees and fines that impact our constituents and that are predatory. So with this specific resolution, I was just told today that there were some issues with the appointmentship. So I will not be able to move forward with this legislation, so I'm going to hold it.
Okay. All right, very well. And thank you very much. And I believe that completes our agenda for this evening. Thank you, everyone, for hanging tough. I know we had a pretty packed agenda coming back from a city council break, but I appreciate everyone kind of looking at the again, fiscal order that we have to go through, and there's a lot going on, frankly. Due to ARPA, we have a lot more going on, and we have a lot more money in and out, but we need to keep track of every cent. So I appreciate everyone remaining with us. Our next city council meeting is this Thursday, September 15th. And with that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Second. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, this meeting has concluded, and I look forward to seeing everyone at the October Finance Committee meeting. Thank you.